Hello and welcome back to Microsoft Virtual Academy, where we're talking about getting started with Template 10. We're now actually going to walk through a sample application that we put together to really coalesce all of the various ideas and various sessions that we talked about today with Template 10. So we wanted to put together something that was a news app.
Yeah, I mean, over and over, we've said we've kind of modeled a lot of the UI that we're doing after the first-party news app that ships with Windows 10. So why not build a news app?
Yeah, why not?
We won't be
not as if
shipping
the other
this.
one wasn't that good.
We won't be shipping this with Windows 10.
Exactly. And so we started off with a few requirements that we wanted to show, really to kind of demonstrate the capabilities of Template 10. So adaptive layout, every app needs to have that. We wanted to show a little article flow because we wanted to be just a little bit more than just a boring demo.
That's right, how to handle text in a sophisticated way.
Yep. User favorites. So we wanted to show, this is really an idea of how you can save some settings and update some values behind the scenes. Activation types. So we wanted to deal with a scenario where we were using protocol activation to launch our app with a pre-filtered set of articles. And other Template 10 features, such as the navigation.
Activation by protocol, things like that.
Yep, menus and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. So all of those things put together kind of put Template 10 to the test to make sure that it can be used in applications that you're writing. And so this is us proving that it actually can.
Indeed. So if we have a quick look, here is the example. So we wanted to put together an adaptive layout that responded to width and worked well on mobile and so on and so forth. So
obviously, we're going to use the hamburger menu as well, and then add a couple other features like filter and stuff like that as well.
Okay.
So let me show the adaptive layout. I have the app running, and in fact, let me not make it so it looks like the slide deck is running as well. And here we are. So this is the app, right? And so as I go to its widest mode, I want to use the hamburger button or the menu so that it goes wide, right? So all this is native. I didn't have to make any changes there. But I also want to change the layout. So in this case, we've changed the height and width, so it's gotten a little bit bigger. And if I were to go slowly back, you'll be able to see the difference, right? So I can go back, they've gotten slightly smaller as well. And then I want to have that experience as I go narrow. And so each of these map to all three of the visual states we use in Template 10 automatically, right? This this idea of greater than 0, greater than 520, and then greater than 1200. And so they go all the way across, make some nice changes. And these are done in an easy way, right? They're just done by setting the item container style, right? So let me pull up my, I don't have the main one. There we go. So inside the visual state, you can see by the way, all the visual states are stubbed in. So when I use my new, I say file new project and I get it, you'll see these stubs. And if they aren't there, Template 10 ships with
series of snippets.
Series of snippets. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so you can use that as well. Or you can
they all start T10.
And they all start T10. That's exactly right. Including one XAML snippet. Thank you. Snippet.
It's been a long day.
For these visual states, if you wanted, if you didn't have it. Anyway, so you can see that we have the adaptive state group, and here's narrow, and it's set up automatically with what we've defined in our custom XAML. And then we have a series of setters. In this case, we're only doing one, and we're setting the item container style to a fresh style. So it basically reapplies the style to the individual item. So this is a grid view, so it's the grid view item that gets changed. And so we're changing to make sure that it's stretched both left and right and up and down, as well as we change the size here, height and width. And so if we were to go down and see what we did elsewhere, we are doing the exact same thing. We're only changing its size to be slightly smaller when we're in normal. And then when we go to wide, or larger, I mean, and then we make it even larger still when we go to the wide one. And then that's all we do to it.
Yeah,
we're just updating the grid that way. All of this was already here with the template from Template 10, so it was easy for us to implement. That's an adaptive layout that kind of is practically for free. All the other stuff that's happening is just the Template 10 controls responding for me.
Sure. So if you switch back to my slides for a second. So the next part that we wanted to do was to incorporate this adaptive UI to our reading panes. And so again, it's quite common if you're doing this type of article reading that you want to have an attractive layout for your UI, that you want it to flow nicely. And you obviously need to scale for your different sizes. So let's quickly drill in and see how you did that.
All right, let's take a look. So if I have the main page here, you can see that this is intended to be a lot of, really high media sort of thing where I'm going to have an image for each one. So I go into the one with a little girl here. And we've done a couple of things. So let's just start with the basic implementation that the image is resizing. And so it's the same image. We're using its fill to make sure that it doesn't get skewed. And as we go to narrow, we make space for it. As we go to normal, we make it a little bit larger because we have a little more space. And as we go to wide, we can really make it as wide as we want that way. So it's really great. The more sophisticated piece of it is we made sure that the text wraps around the image. And so that's a pretty unusual capability inside a XAML application. And you can do that with the rich text box. And so we use or block in this case. We use the rich text block, which in concert with the overflow rich text block allows you to set up, in this case, a small block here on the left. And then this is the overflow that goes below it. And so as it doesn't fit, it just starts filling up the one below it. It's really nice, gives a nice kind of a document flow. And in fact, there's a flow document in WPF. Developers might wonder if that carries over to UWP. And it does, right here. This is the flow document. And so this is an inline image and the end. It's as easy as that. But it does give a nice feel. This is what you would expect for a reading application full of content to kind of look like and feel good. And if I were on the phone, this is basically what the phone looks like, right? It would be nice and narrow, but can go as tall as you need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. A funny aside that you showed me, when you run this on Continuum, right? Depending on which device you're using and how high or low the scaling factor is, then it can actually go to the ultra-wide mode, even though you're on the phone. So it's not just bigger, it's massively bigger.
It was massively bigger, yes.
And so you went in and actually increased your scale factor just a little bit because everything was almost tiny on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising when you're on those devices.
What it's capable of is surprising to
me. It is. It is so powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Anyway, so the next requirement that we had for this was the document flow. This is how we did it.
Yeah. Okay, so if you flip back to my slides for a second. So the next thing we wanted to do was to really start incorporating some data persistence in here and also show how you could use this to create transient items on your navigation shell based around those things. So we decided we wanted to favorite articles and create the app bar extension in the title bar not the title bar, the page header, to provide a primary command that allow you to favorite an article, and also to provide the ability to update your nav menu to include your favorited articles. So why don't we drill into that a little bit?
All right, let's do it. Okay, so my application, I'd like to show the structure a little bit of this application. First of all, there are two projects instead of one. The first is the news service. And so there's absolutely no reason for me to really demonstrate this. This is what any developer would write to call out to their web service or whatever and abstract it into a portable class library. We've done it. We've hard-coded all of this. It's all lorem ipsum data, and it's just images that we have. But obviously, yours would call out to something else, and maybe it would still use local data if it was offline, but all that would be handled by whatever you put here. Then inside the client, we have a data service, right? So we were talking about view services and how almost everybody's going to have a settings service. And honestly, more than likely, everybody's going to have some sort of data service. They may have several, actually. And in this case, so the data service calls out to the news service, reads that data, and then displays it. Nothing else, right? It doesn't do the caching. It counts on the news service to do the caching, but certainly could do the caching. It does do in-memory caching, but that's a little bit different. The other thing that it does, in fact, let me open it. The other thing that it does is it handles all the favorites. So there's a method here for remove and add favorites, as well as list what those favorites are. And so here's the get, right? So I can list them all out. In this case, we've done it as simple as possible. We don't have SQLite or anything going on. It just creates a list. We assume that list is going to be, less than, there's only 20 in our sample data, so it's got to be 20 or less. I haven't tried putting them all in the favorites. And then taking that list, serializing it, save it to a file. When we're ready to, come back into our session, I just read from that file if it exists and deserialize it and put it back into memory. And so it's as simple as that. That's a pretty common way to handle something simple like favorites too. In fact, sometimes SQLite is actually overkill on such a simple thing. If I were to show you the whole infrastructure of SQLite just to accomplish this, you'd probably raise your eyebrows.
So it's actually getting a lot easier now with EF Core.
and the fact that it ships now in UWP, so you don't. There's nothing really to add to it.
Yeah.
I should have done it in SQLite. Oh, okay. Anyway, beside all that, I shouldn't have done it in SQLite, but there's a million ways
It
to
was
do
easy
the
enough
same
to
thing.
do it. Yeah.
But I wanted you to know how it happened. So the data for the articles comes from the news service. The favorites are just saved in a serialized file, so it's pretty great. Let me show you now how it works, just visually, and then we'll show you the implementation inside the shell. And so we showed when we were talking about, I love that, we showed when we were talking about declaring the hamburger menu that you can declare all the buttons that go inside it. But you can easily dynamically do those in code as well, and that's what we did to enable the favorites. Interesting little problem with the app bar button, or the app bar button, is the hover state is still black, so you have to still have to template it, like it or not. Yeah. Looking forward to Redstone. All right, so I'll click this, right, and it'll well, let's see. I click it. I click. Wait a minute. Maybe I've commented out the code. Let's just double check.
It's that could be a demo you prepared earlier.
Here's the code that actually.
It's a fun magic.
So much happiness when it fails for a reason you can figure out. All right, great. Well, let me start with just the implementation, and then I'll show you the way the UI looks. All right. So pretend this, and this are not there, right? Pretend those are gone, and everything else is just the standard implementation of a hamburger menu that you get from the template. But let's say in the loaded event of this page, you wanted to look for whether or not there are any favorites, and then add them to the menu, right? So we'll call that render favorites, and we'll abstract that away to a repeatable method, and we'll also listen for our data service to raise a favorites changed. So if they ever change, I can re-render to make sure that keeps up to date, right? That's all. They're both calling render favorites. Here's render favorites. How does that work? Well, I've commented
right now it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I'll tell you how it works. It works beautifully. No errors. First, it goes to get all the existing buttons in the hamburger menu that are for favorites and clears them out, right? Rather than doing a delta and then remove them. This happens sub-second, so it doesn't really matter. And so what it does is it goes and gets all the favorites and quickly removes them. And then it goes and gets all of the favorites from the data service, because the reason this is being called is either the event or at the beginning. And so it goes and gets all of the favorites, which are cached anyway, so it's nice, and then simply adds them all in. Well, how does it add them all in? Well, that's easy enough. Primary button.add, but we've abstracted the complexity of making the button to the make button article, or make button method. And when you see, in fact, let me go back to the shell just for a second. I want you to see that this is a hamburger button. It really is a hamburger button info that has as its content a stack button, that has as its content well, in this case, it's a view box. It's a complicated one. Here, it has as its content a stack panel, which is horizontally aligned or oriented, with an icon and a text box, right? So it's just the image.
Pretty simple and straightforward.
That's what we're duplicating here. So in fact, it's easier to start.
And this is why you see we like to use XAML instead of code to create UI elements.
So voluminous. That's exactly right. So I'll start from the bottom up, because that's how you have to create it in code. And so we start with the info button itself, and in that we have the stack panel, and inside the stack panel we have the text block, and next to the text block we have the icon, and we add them all as children and then nest them all the way they're supposed to be here as content. So I define it all, and in that I say this is a command button. Now a command button is special inside the hamburger button, our menu. We haven't actually talked about this. A button can be one of two things, a toggle button or a command button. If it's a command button, it doesn't ever become selected. It only has a tapped event. And so I've done that, and I've handled the tap event here. So whenever you tap this button, it navigates to, and in this case, because of the way that this magic works in C#, I still have the context to the original article and can navigate to its ID. So pretty powerful and beautiful.
Yep.
And so it's just navigating, and that way I don't have to set the page type and let it navigate. All right.
Now you should show us how it looks when it's running.
Yeah, now let's just see what it does. That's absolutely beautiful. All right. So remember, this will run automatically at loaded and then keep itself up to date every time favorites change. All right. Loading. All right. So now I'll go into this guy smiling, and I'll say add this to favorites, and you can see there's a little star. You can't see the text, but I'll expand it. You can see this is the beginning of the title. Right? So I'll bring that down. I'll add a couple more just so you can see them adding in. It's kind of nice. There's another. right? And then let me add one more of these two people taking a selfie, and beautiful, right? So each of them lined up here. And if
it's
I were
very
to,
meta because there's somebody taking pictures of people taking the pictures of themselves.
I guess there is somebody taking a picture of that picture. That's right. Yeah. And if I were to restart this application, then all of the favorites will still be there, because what happens is every time I save one, or every time I add one, it saves it out to the file for me. Right? And there are my 3. And so I keep it between. Remember, it's just a file serialization. So easy enough. Easy enough. Very nice. And by the way, it switches between remove and add. And that's because there are actually 2 buttons here. And I hide and show depending, and I have a nice little value in converter that hides.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's pretty.
You're tying the stuff together.
Yeah.
We should point out that this sample will be available for people to have a look at as well.
That's right. We'll move it into samples here in a little while. That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, let's switch back to my screen for the time being. So we also wanted to add some additional, more advanced features in there, and we've seen. Jerry's extended splash screen has been coming up, and every time he's been giggling watching it. So we'll dig into that in a moment. But you've also added in protocol activation. So why don't you show that?
Protocol activation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Before I do, let me show some suspension control, and then I'll show you how that plays into protocol activation. And so if I go into my application here, nice. Then I go in and I say, I want to filter this down to only the NULA, let's say. And so you can see the 2 that have NULA in the title. I could change it to only the one that have A-M-E-T. Oh, that's, man, alive, period. There you go. Anyway, so it filters for me. Now, here's what's important. The way that this is handled is right out of the template. There's not too many changes to it, to be honest. If I go to the view model for the main page, there's a filter property. Let me just show that. There is a filter string property right here. And on the onNavigated from, let me start there, on the onNavigated from, if I suspend, then I write that into the suspension state.
Yep.
If I am resuming, then it's passed to me, and if it is, and the filter string is in there, then I go ahead and set it. What that means is, if the user is doing something and my application becomes suspended, and they come back into it, but they have already been doing a filter, it reapplies that filter for them. Right? So it's really nice. In fact, I'll demonstrate how to do it. So here we are, A-M-E-T, and I'll go in and I will suspend it and shut down. So I'll do 2 things. If I just suspended it, it would put it into memory. A resume would come right back. There's no activation, right? That's nothing. So here, it'll actually go into termination mode, It'll shut it down. Terminated will become the previous state. Terminator mode takes over the world, right? Skynet button. All right, so now when I run it again, it'll actually be resuming from a terminated state. When it does, it'll automatically see, I could have stepped into it.
It comes back.
That it comes back the way that you would expect. Yeah, that's really great. That's terrific. And it already has the filter. So this is already implemented in the template, and we just applied it as a filter string instead of the value that it's in the template. But nice and easy. So now let's talk about how we pass things along. If the application isn't running, one of the things that we have registered already inside the app manifest is a declaration that gives us the capability to launch by protocol. And we've called this protocol news app.
Yeah, original.
Because it won't clash with anything.
Yeah, there can't be any other news apps out there.
Right. Then I can run then, let's see. There we go. I can run that. Already got it typed in, so I get it right. News app : so that's the protocol to activate it. And then I give this question mark so I can start building out a query string. And this is, query string is just a kind of like a string dictionary. And so filter equals NULA. And so we've used just the regular activation inside template 10 here in the, right here. Inside start, right? Here, by the way, there's our delay to show that beautiful
That's our
screen.
business logic running behind the scenes.
Right. This is kind of silly when you read it all from a JSON file. But so here is the protocol. Here are the args that are being passed into onStart, and I attempt to cast them to protocol activated event args.
And so they will not equal to null if you have been protocol activated.
That's right. If they're not null, then I've been activated by a protocol and I can act on it. And in this case, the only action I really want to do is to parse out the query string, get the filter value, and set it to a param, which is outside of that context.
And so it's worthwhile pointing out there that Windows Foundation form your www form URL.
Yeah.
So that basically deals with query strings, and so it's that is what breaks it into the key value pairs, so that we can check for the existence of a key and a value.
That's right. If that didn't exist, we would have written one in template 10. I mean, you know we would have.
Yeah.
All right, great. And so anyway, this is where I parse out the filter and I pass it in. So on a normal execution, this wouldn't have run, of course, and so I'm passing in blank and nothing occurs, right? You filter with empty string, you get it all. And so in this case, we're going to filter with whatever that param is. And so when I execute by protocol, using Windows run, it wouldn't get launched. All right, beautiful. I say go. By the way, I don't need to debug this in order to make it work. But if I did want to step into it, a lot of people don't know that you can go into the properties of the project. You can go to debug, and you can say, do not launch, but debug my code when it starts. And so this is pretty cool. I can go back and put a breakpoint right here. And now when I launch it, it goes ahead and runs, and then behind the scenes attaches into my project. Pretty cool. Very cool, actually.
Justice.
That's hilarious. All right, so anyway, it's starting up. I hit the breakpoint right here, and if I step into it, I can see that the args that's passed to me right here, I activated event args, and I can go right there. Right there, got it, perfect. Not null, they cast perfectly into protocol activated event args, and I can kind of go from there. I can pull it open just so you can see real quick what protocol activated event args. That's obviously not what we're trying to demo here, but there's what we passed in. News app, filter equals NULA. And I say go, continue. The app goes ahead and loads, pre-populates the filter, and goes from there.
Wonderful job. You mentioned the splash screen. You showed our task delay, which represents the busy work that allows our task to execute. Do you want to quickly show how you showed that wonderful ring of progress?
Yeah. Let's go with just how you show a task, or how you show a splash screen in the first place. So remember, the structure of the bootstrapper is just constructor, then initialize, and then on start. And so everything between the constructor and on start in the final navigation always is hidden by a splash screen if you provide it. And so in this case, we're setting it up, of course, because we want it to be available right away. We go ahead and set it up right here, actually, in the constructor, so it's right away. Right? What you pass it is not an instance of it, but a method that can create the instance.
It's a factory method.
It is a factory. We should have named it Oh, we did. That's great. Finally did one naming right. And then it loads splash. So in this case, the right place for you to do this long-running task is right here. So you would replace this, whatever, right at the beginning of your start async, right before you do your navigation. And then all of that goes into our splash view that we've created. And so the splash view actually is clever for a couple of reasons. The only argument you pass into it is the splash screen. And splash screen is actually a native class that is giving you all the information of the splash screen that the native splash screen that it created for you.
So you can render something that looks exactly the same, and there isn't a flash between them.
It tells you the image size, where it was, what it was, the background color, everything. And so you can recreate that so that as it does this invisible flicker between the one that is automatically built for you and the one that you've just built, that flicker is as minimized as possible. Yeah, to the point of hopefully you don't even see it. And in ours, we show the image where you expect. It's pretty crappy resolution, but it is what it is. Developers watching this will make a much better version. And but then we added over top of it the ring segment. And so ring segment is it's actually not in template 10. It's just a ring segment. And so it's up here in the controls folder of this project. And so once we put that in sample, everybody will probably make this their default.
Exactly.
As far as, but the way that it's animated, by the way, a ring segment only draws a ring segment. It doesn't animate a ring segment. You have to animate it. And so here's the storyboard. This is the ring storyboard that animates the segment. So in this case, we're animating the end. It's called the end angle. So 0 being at the top and 360 being at the top again. And so we just animate, in this case, we're animating to 359.99999, and we do it in 3 seconds. And so that's because we already know our timing. In any other case, we might make this kind of a repeating loop, so it's less determinate, right? Because you don't necessarily know it's going to take 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So maybe it gets to the end and you have it repeat. No big deal there. Anyway, that's the way we do it. And it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's pretty much covered all of the key aspects as we were trying to pull all this stuff together, because we really wanted to give you a different perspective on how you can build these things. And I think it was actually pretty straightforward to build this.
Yeah,
with
all in an afternoon.
Yeah, within all of the plumbing that's already available to us, from the idea. Now, obviously, you'd want to put more into an application you were building yourself in terms of the look and feel and so on and so forth.
Well, especially data.
Yeah, real data is a good idea. But I hope that gives everybody a good perspective on what it takes to leverage Template 10 and how it can get you a long way very, very quickly.
That's right. The real intent of Template 10 is to be able to make your UWP app really go to market as quickly as possible by making it so you don't have to write all the boilerplate junk that you would have to otherwise. So it's pretty great. I think we've come a long way. Can't wait to see where Template 10 kind of goes from here. Right now, it's in a really healthy place.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Good luck. We'll talk to you again.